James Gunn's playing Jor-El in Superman. That's just a rumour. Is this thing on? Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. I am Mick, your host with the most just your girlfriends and your wives. You can follow me on X Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X. On TikTok, Mad Mickey's World, because I'm barking, raving, mad. I'm an absolute lunatic. And on Snapchat, BMouth60, Mick, your host with the most. And a very warm welcome to Saturday's edition of the DCU Daily and episode 2 of the history of Superman on film and on television. And yes, today we're talking about Smallville. I can't accurately describe to you the emotional impact that Smallville had on me, because Smallville had a deep, profound impact on me. Just by thinking about the show, I want to break down in tears of happiness. That's what this show means to me and meant to me. I'm on a cycle of rewatching the show. I can't put it down. I watch an episode a day. I'm on season 5, right? Today I'll be watching the episode Fanatic. We're not far away from rewatching Jonathan Kent die. What an amazing episode that is. Reckoning, the 100th episode of the show. Anyway, the impact for me is very deep in terms of Smallville. Now, when I first heard about Smallville, it was described to me as a young Superman show. And I thought, I don't want this. I don't want a Superman TV show. I don't want Superboy again. I watched that in the 80s. I want an epic Superman movie. And I was so annoyed that they cancelled, WB cancelled the Tim Burton, Nicolas Cage Superman movie. Despite the pre-production mishaps, or what looked like mishaps, I knew that Tim Burton was a genius, is a genius. I love his Batman movies. I love everything that Tim Burton does. He's got a great, vivid imagination. And I still want to see that movie. I'd pay him right now if I had the money to make that damn movie. So I was frustrated. I didn't want another Superman TV show. The Dean Cain and Terry Hatcher show wasn't really for me. And we had Dean Cain saying how much more cooler his Clark Kent was than Christopher Reeves. That annoyed me as well. But anyway, so one Sunday I'm hungover, I'm going through the remote, and I'm on Channel 4 in the UK where I used to live, and the on description thing saying Smallville, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, there's only one Smallville, the place where Superman, Clark Kent, Kal-El grew up at. This is Smallville, this is about Superman. I see this bald guy, Michael Rosenbaum. It's Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is in this show. He lives in a castle. He lives in a mansion down the road from Clark's farm. This is insane. And they're developing this fledgling friendship when we all know they're going to become enemies. This just kind of opened my mind, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. And you had Lana Lang, and Christine looked so beautiful, and her acting was brilliant, and I was interested in her character. They had the original character of Chloe Sullivan, Pete Ross. I love Sam Jones III. And let me say, Pete Ross was done dirty. So every time someone is kicked off a show prematurely, I say they've been Pete Ross. I was so angry they got rid of him. I'm still angry they got rid of Sam Jones III as Pete Ross. I loved him. He's that friend without that much. He didn't have baggage. He didn't have drama. But he was important to Clark in Clark's life. I was so excited when he found out Clark's secret. But the concepts in this show were amazing. First of all, having Lex Luthor on the show was amazing. And Michael Rosenbaum gave Lex such a vast, dynamic, eloquent, eccentric dynamic. And it really, really worked. I mean, how Michael Rosenbaum isn't being nominated for Oscars and Emmys, and he never was. But I thought after Smallville, that was his future. He's doing podcasts. So the industry's loss is the podcast industry's gain. But it's crazy to me that Michael Rosenbaum is not really acting anymore. Obviously, I don't know what happened there. But yeah, I'd love to interview the guy, but that's never going to happen. But the show was so brilliant. And to cast John Schneider, who was in the Dukes of Hazzard. I grew up watching the Dukes of Hazzard as Jonathan Kent. Annette O'Toole, who was in Superman 3, who played Lana Lang in Superman 3. I loved her as Lana in Superman 3. I'm one of the few people who love Superman 3, especially that moment when Superman kicks one missile onto the other. Who remembers the Shreddies adverts, right? In this series, we'll get to Superman 3. We'll get to all the stuff that meant something to me, and Smallville was amazing. You know, before Smallville, the flame for Superman was burning out in my heart, and it reinvigorated my love for Superman. You know, thanks to Smallville, I learned so much more about Superman and other DC Comics characters. I'd never heard of Green Arrow before Smallville. I never heard of Black Canary before Smallville. I never heard of Martian Manhunter before Smallville. There's so many things I didn't know before Smallville, that Superman had a weakness for magic, that magic can hurt him. It can kill him, right? I didn't know that. I just thought it was kryptonite, and that was it. And the different color kryptonites we learned about, you know, on the show as well. But think about what they did. Alfred Goff and Miles Miller developed and created the show, and it was amazing. They made kryptonite a character in, first of all, the first series of the show. A lot of people hate the Meteor Freaks, the Freak of the Week. I didn't. I found it kind of interesting because what they do, because teenagers go through so much difficult, complex emotional issues. So they took the kryptonite and they took those emotional issues and they made them a superpower once a week that Clark has to really help those kids in a way. Some of them he did. We've got Jodie, played by Amy Adams, who's got an eating disorder and she's getting body shamed and she's being bullied for being a little bit overweight, right? She's not really that overweight, but that was an interesting concept as well. People hate that episode, Craven. I think it was well done, and I thought Amy Adams was sensational in that episode. Amy Adams again starts on Smallville, ends up playing Lois Lane wonderfully in the Snyderverse. But our very own Lois Lane in Smallville, you know what Smallville did, what Alan Miles did, and their excellent writing team, Souders, Peterson, Todd and Darren, all of them, Holly Harold, I could sit here all day oozing about the writers on Smallville, because there's a problem in the industry right now. We don't have very good television writers. Well, the ones on Smallville were absolutely excellent. We had comic book legend Jeff Loeb in the Smallville writers' room from around season 3 or 4. No, he's been around, he was around, I think, since series 2, right? Until about series 5 and 6. Then he went and he was helping with Heroes, and then he became in charge of Marvel Television. That didn't really go well for him. But Jeff Loeb wrote the Superman graphic novel, Superman for All Seasons, which inspired Smallville. And to have someone like that who really understood Superman consulting on the show. I mean, someone like Annette O'Toole, who played Martha Kent, huge Superman fan, read all the comics, loved Lana growing up, loved Lana over Lois Lane. She's said that in interviews as well. Very upset, if you've ever seen her come on to the podcast Talkville, which they review an episode of Smallville every week. She was upset she never got to, reunite with Christopher Reeve when he was on Rosetta. Yeah, that episode when Christopher Reeve is on Smallville. I didn't know what we were going to get. I thought it was they were just going to will him past. But they gave him a character. They made him part of the Smallville mythology. The man's performances in Rosetta and in the season 3 episode Legacy were outstanding. Don't forget, this is a man who needs to breathe through a tube to talk. And he's giving these brilliant pieces of dialogue, and especially in Rosetta, it was amazing. It was a passing of the torch wonderfully. That's how you do it, everyone. We keep on hearing this thing about Superman and Lois being cancelled and how fine it is, and it's just passing on the baton. Yeah, well, the way Smallville did it with Sir Christopher Reeve to Tom Welling was so beautiful. And what a moment. But for me, that's what Smallville means to me. It's the emotional element of the show. They took our feelings for Superman, and I don't know how they did it. It was amazing. There's an episode in season 7 when Patricia Swan is in an episode, and she gives him the Veritas journal, and Clark says, everyone expects me to be this hero. And I just don't want to let anyone down. And that's a beautiful thing, isn't it? Because that's something about interpretations as well, and how sometimes they can let people down. Clark's got all these expectations, this destiny, and he doesn't know how to handle it. And what I love about Clark in Smallville is he makes mistakes because he's a boy and not a man. So he's not the finished article. But there's so many things they managed to capture about this character. And one of the beautiful things about the Lex Luthor character and his fight, he's fighting to stay with his good side. And I love that episode when Clark goes into the mind of Lex Luthor and we see the good Lex, the little boy Lex, and we see the evil Lex, right, trying to destroy the good side of him. It's amazing. But one of the themes the show used with Lex was his obsession with Jonathan Kent. He wanted Jonathan Kent, a man who wasn't even his father, to respect him. There's that. I was watching Lexmas. What a great episode that is. And in his fantasy dream, Jonathan Kent, who's now a senator, actually says to him, "I'm proud of you. I couldn't be more proud of you if you were my own son." These are the words that Lex Luthor always wanted to hear. More than being with Lana, more than having the respect of Clark, he wanted the respect of a man, of a father figure, because Lionel was no father figure to him. The abuse that he put up with from Lionel, where Jonathan Kent just wanted Lex to be a good man. And that was difficult for Lex, because before Jonathan Kent, he didn't have any examples. So from the first moment they meet on the pilot, when Jonathan sees that he's caused this crash, and he's annoyed at him, and he says, whatever he says, Clark saved my life. He says, if there's anything I can do, and Jonathan says, drive slower. So Jonathan's got this very, very kind of, he doesn't like Lex, he doesn't trust Lex, and he's worried the influence Lex is going to have on Clark. He sees Lex and the Luthors as a threat because he's experienced Lionel, he knows how dangerous Lionel can be, and he's worried about his son. And Lex is battling for Jonathan Kent's respect. And these are the themes you get in Smallville. If you watch Smallville, if you're a fan, you'll understand what I'm talking about. For us who loved it, it was absolutely fantastic. I get Superman and Lois stands all the time. Ooh, we had a comic accurate Doomsday. You didn't. No, Smallville created their own canon. I mean, I think their concept of Doomsday was kind of interesting, where they turned him into this kind of, they had Davis Bloom, who's kind of this David Banner, kind of Jekyll and Hyde character. And he's fighting to be a good man. He is a good man. He doesn't know he's from another planet. He's an ambulance driver. He's a paramedic. He wants to help people. He's trying to help people in a children's centre, and he's a good guy. And Clark's trying to find a way because Clark doesn't want to kill him, even though he turns into Doomsday. I think that's a very emotional storyline as well. Many people don't like it because the problem is with a lot of comic book stands, they want everything to be accurate to the comics. But Smallville had a much smaller budget to Superman and Lois, and that's why it was less comic book accurate. I love Superman and Lois. I love what it did, but I think Smallville is the Don. One of the Dons, right? One of the goats of Superman adaptations. Because it took Superman and remolded it into something wonderful. Something else I love about Smallville, it earned the right to become a superhero show. It wasn't really a superhero show in season 1, season 2, season 3. In season 4, we met Impulse, which is their version of The Flash, right? And we meet Bart Allen, a very different version of The Flash with a very different history to the one we see in the comics. But it's interesting. And then in season 5, we get that episode Justice, where we get these pre-Justice League Aquaman, the Aquaman, pre-Justice League Aquaman, who we met in season 5 earlier on. Is it season? No. Season 6. I'm getting my Smallville wrong. Yeah, season 6, right? We get a pre-Justice League Aquaman. We get a pre-Justice League Cyborg. Obviously a pre-Justice League Superman, a pre-Superman. Superman in Clark Kent as well. We get Green Arrow, which we're introduced with into, the first half of Series 6. So they did a lot of things. So they took their time for 4 or 5 years and then became this superhero show. The achievements of Smallville just kept on coming and coming. In its final season, they introduced Connor Kent, Superboy. They did Darkseid. I don't think they nailed Darkseid as well as the other characters, but Brainiac. They didn't have the budget for a skull ship, and they didn't want him to have kind of the green skin and all of that, but they gave us a very, very interesting Brainiac, and I love his plan in Series 5. It's a plan A and a plan B. Plan A is to try and manipulate Clark to free Zod from the Phantom Zone, but when that fails, he uses Lex to do the same thing, and ultimately he does. Because in Season 5, Brainiac is a battle Clark just can't win, and he won't win. Brilliant show.